Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and we have to take a look at the Anaheim Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks have two guys in particular that everybody's talking about, maybe three, depending on what you think of Josh Manson's situation, but the Ducks are in a weird spot. They're a pretty good team that might just make the playoffs, yet it looks like they will have to sell at the deadline. We'll explain why, who may be going on their way out. We'll be looking at that today. So, the first thing we have to get to up in Anaheim is the three guys in question today. And one of them has become more clear. Actually, all of them are fairly clear at this point. It's just a matter of where the other two will go. So, the first one is Rickard Rakell. The second one, Josh Manson, and the third one is Hampus Lindholm. So the first one we're going to get to here is the forward Rickard Rakell. Rakell has been with the Ducks for a long time now. He was a guy that was rumored to get traded at last year's deadline in 2021. The price just seemed a little bit too sweet for most teams, and they decided not to get that done. Bob Murray ended up keeping him, and with a year left until his expiration date as a rental, which is now to this year, things have drastically changed for Rakell. So, from Frank Saravelli, Rickard Rakell is the most likely player with an expiring contract on the Ducks to be traded. And that's not necessarily true, which we would later find out. But that was that report from David Paginotta. My understanding is Rickard Rakell is another player that is likely to be moved before the deadline. A lot of teams had interest last year, and that carried over to this year. The thing is, Rickard Rakell hasn't been that great for the Ducks, quite frankly, and I think a lot of teams are seeing maybe an opportunity to maybe poach him for a little bit cheaper than he was last year. And unfortunately, like I said, the price was too sweet for what was a bad season last year, followed up now with two bad seasons going into this deadline. There is definitely going to be a lesser value placed on Rakell, but I definitely think teams will be looking at number 67 in Anaheim. Now that leads us to Dennis Bernstein. My understanding is Hampus Lindholm will test free agency. Ducks would love to have him back. Edmonton would love a player like Josh Manson, but he won't waive to go there. He probably takes a discount to stay in Anaheim. So that kind of takes two birds with one stone. But basically, Josh Manson is becoming more and more certain to stay with Anaheim. That doesn't guarantee until it is signed pen to paper, ink to tab. Until that transaction is complete, you can't guarantee anything, as we just saw with Forsberg in Nashville. But it looks more likely than not, Josh Manson's mindset is, I like being out in California, playing in SoCal, out in Anaheim, wearing these beautiful jerseys half the year. I want to stay in Anaheim. So it looks like Josh Manson is, for the moment at the very least, off the trade market, and it sounds like he will be working out a long-term deal to stay in Anaheim. But that leads us to the next story, which is obviously the big storyline of today's video. That is Hampus Lindholm. So Hampus Lindholm kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody was really talking about him. I made a video about him, I want to say in November or December of last year in 2021. But things have definitely changed. It sounds like Hampus Lindholm's mindset is set on testing the free agency waters this July. And that has unfortunately led the Ducks, who are a potential playoff team, kind of being kind of stuck in a situation where they have to sell him because they can't afford to lose him for nothing. I talked about this in a video a couple weeks ago. But Hampus Lindholm is a guy the Ducks cannot afford to lose for nothing. Like I said in other videos, similar to what the Sharks are dealing with Tomas Hertl, and similar to what the Predators had to deal with Philip Forsberg. A guy that wants to test free agency, those teams cannot afford to let him walk for nothing. And despite being a fringe playoff team, the Ducks right now currently are not in a playoff spot, and they can't afford to lose Lindholm. And I think it would be a shame for the Ducks if, worst case scenario, right? You have to look at that here. You have to look at, they go to the deadline, they keep Lindholm, they go for the playoffs, they ultimately miss by a point or two, and now you didn't make the playoffs, and you're going to probably lose Lindholm in the summer. They can't jeopardize that. And in Pat Verbeek's first GM, season as the Ducks guy, you can't afford that. So it definitely makes sense why the Ducks would look to go that route. And that's why, from Eric Stevens, Hampus Lindholm on contract talks with Anaheim. There's been a little talk. I'm going to leave that for my agent. That stuff usually all sorts itself out when you try out hardest. Or try your hardest and try not to focus on all those kinds of things, which, again, this was earlier on, but now we've since heard he does want to definitely 100% want to test free agency this summer, which unfortunately will probably lower his trade value. If you're looking at a sign-in trade at the deadline, great. The Ducks probably get more for him. But as a pure rental who is adamant about testing free agency this summer, the Ducks probably won't get as much, again, if he had more duration on his deal. So this is from Dennis Bernstein. Hampus Lindholm appears to be set on testing the market. The Anaheim Ducks are expecting defenseman Lindholm to explore UFA agency this summer. And now we started to hear more from Bernstein in terms of the teams that are looking at Hampus Lindholm. And now that this is more relevant information, this is newer stuff here. The Panthers, Rangers, and Bruins are among the teams that could heavily pursue Hampus Lindholm. Again, I see a fit with all those teams looking to add a puck-moving, good skating defenseman. I'd hate to see him go to the Rangers or the Bruins because they're, my Islanders teams, but I really like Hampus Lindholm. I could see him being a guy that if the Florida Panthers miss out on a guy like Chychrun, I think Hampus Lindholm would be a really nice add. And I always talk about that. Imagine having Mackenzie Weegar and Aaron Ekblad as your top pair and Lindholm there. My God, the Panthers would be an absolute juggernaut this playoffs. And they could probably get some pretty nice assets for Hampus Lindholm, if I'm going to be honest. So that's something definitely to keep an eye on. So that's the latest on Lindholm. We had a little bit more here on Josh Manson. Josh Manson is interested in staying in Anaheim and could work out an extension ahead of the deadline. We already talked about that a little bit. More information on Lindholm. This is a very Lindholm-centric video today from Pierre LeBrun. Teams around the league view Hampus Lindholm as the #1 rental defenseman on the market, even more so than John Klingberg, right? If that's what they're saying. The Ducks reached out to his agent to see if there's enough common ground to sign a new contract extension before the trade deadline. And that's why I think his name's in the trade market, because I just don't think they've gotten very far in those talks. The Maple Leafs have been targeting Ducks defenseman Hampus Lindholm, and that's from Darren Drager. Now that John Klingberg seems to be out of the realm of conversation here for the Leafs, Hampus Lindholm kind of emerges as a name to watch for. Lindholm would definitely be at the top of the list for the Leafs. It could be a really good complementary defenseman. Now the problem is, Hampus Lindholm, I just don't see a real fit there because, what are the Leafs willing to give up? Are they willing to give up a first and second round pick for Hampus Lindholm? He's had a much better season than John Klingberg, but I wonder what the idea is from Dubas. What are the Leafs willing to give up for a top defenseman? That's really my big question there. But I think the Leafs are definitely a team to watch, and specifically the Florida Panthers. I think those two teams at the end of the day will be fighting it out for Hampus Lindholm. Lindholm's, I think, 27, 29 years old, still in the prime of his NHL career, and can make some major bank here this summer on a long-term contract. I could definitely see some fits for both of those teams. But let me know what you guys think. Where do you think Hampus Lindholm will sign here before this year's trade deadline? Let me know down below. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time. Go Ducks.